In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to set up and configure text variables and text frames, where the contents of a text frame are driven from one of our form fields via a variable. We'll start off by creating our variable. So within the Invent plugin window in Adobe InDesign, go to the Variables tab and click on Add Variable. That brings up a few different variable options you can choose from. And in this case, we're going to go for a text variable. We'll begin by typing a variable name. And then we need to select the variable mode. So we'll see there's three options in there. So for the text variable, I also get the option to select if we should have a single line, multi-line, or a rich text mode input. Depending on what you select here, it will change the form control that it is going to be using on the form. So single line will show you a single text box, multi-line will show you a text area input, and then a rich text will show you a text area input, but with some font editing controls like color, font, and size that can be applied to the text that you input into that form element. In this case, I'm going to leave it as a simple single line input. And next we see we have the ability to pre-populate some of the data. So text variables allow a pre-population of data based on the logged in account of the user that's looking at the product. And if you go on that drop down, you'll see it includes data such as names, addresses, and emails. To leave the text variable blank, select nothing. However, you do also have the ability to put a default value in there. So that will be the value shown in that field when the product first loads. So let's say, for example, we're going to do a name field. I might say something like forename, surname. So over on the right-hand side, we have some UI information, so user interface. So first we've got the label. That's the label for this particular variable. So I could have that as the name of the variable. I could have it as an instruction. So let's say enter name, for example. I have the ability to put in some help information if you need to provide some additional information to the user, and some placeholder information. Moving a bit further down the screen, we have some validation options. So for single line and multi-line, we also provide some validation so that you can control to a degree what type of text you are expecting the user to input within this variable. A good example of this is if you create a variable to accept an email address, you can select our preset email regex down here. That will ensure that the user inputs a valid email address format. You're also able to enter validation for minimum and maximum character count. So for example, if this is a name, I might say there's a minimum character count of 4 characters, just to give it some validation and to make sure that it can't be blank. We can see that for any of those validation steps, we have the ability to customize the message that's shown to our end users. With all of those things configured, we can click Save. Next, we need to make sure that one of our text frames on the artwork itself, so on the canvas itself, is linked to that variable so that it shows the contents of that variable. Now, the example we've set up here is to do with the name. So if I go to this option here, which is showing me the name on our business card example, and then go over to the Properties tab, you can see that's a text frame. And if I click Enable, that enables that field to be controlled dynamically using Invent. There's a lot of different things we can control on here. So if I scroll down, you can see there's things like text color, font size, and font options. In this case, we're going to keep it nice and simple, just with the text options setting. Currently it's unlinked, say it's not linked to any of our resources or variables. If I want to link it to the variable that we just created, I say variable, it will show me a list of relevant variables, and that is now linked. Another option that we have here, which is worth considering, is the fit to box option. So this will ensure that the size of the box itself does not change, but whatever the contents of that box are, it will try its best to fill that box. So it will change the size of the font to fill the box. So if you've got something like this scenario, so a business card, you might want it so the name covers as much of that area as possible. Fit to box will allow you to do that. And if needed, you can also enter some additional validation in the forms of a minimum and maximum font size that is available. From here, we're just going to go ahead and export that MEX file that we can import into MegaEdit. So if we look over on the right-hand side there, the variable will be shown in the form within MegaEdit. When text is entered into the text box in the form, the text frame on the product itself, if I change the page, will be populated with those contents. We can also see, for example, that we have our help text available, our UI name has been changed as we specified, and we should have some validation on here as well. You can couple this functionality with the application of additional restrictions on the text frame. So for example, we could do this in Invent itself, but we can also do it once the template has been imported. I could limit the customer's ability to actually select this field at all. And this ensures that the data can only be entered via the form and not on the template itself. So for example, if I couple that with the do not select setting, which is already active in this case, if I emulate user mode to see how the actual end users would interact with this, that is not selectable. So I can only enter data via this form.